Welcome to the Aging Well podcast, where we explore the science, stories, and strategies behind living a longer, healthier, and more purposeful life. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong. In this episode, I am joined by Richard Wexler, co-founder and CEO of aplantoage.org, a nonprofit resource helping families take action before a health crisis hits. Richard has spent 14 years caring for 4 aging parents and knows firsthand how complex and emotionally exhausting the caregiving journey can be. Together, we'll explore why aging should be a family conversation, what most people misunderstand about caregiving and care planning, and why now, not later, is the right time to put a care plan in place for aging well. Richard, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. Now, you've cared for 4 aging parents. How did that experience shape your vision behind a plan to age?
Wow. It altered my life. I mean, 20 years ago, I'm working in the software industry, married later, 2 small kids. And we knew we had 4 parents in their 80s, but I think you're so involved in your own life. The kids were younger, the school, the homework, the sports, the dance. My job was a long commute. I was working many hours every day, every week. And I don't think you're thinking about the fact that you have these 4 parents that are aging. And I don't think you're thinking about what's going to happen if. And then in the summer of, 20 years ago, in the summer of '05, the phone started ringing, which turned out to be 4 phone calls, and each one of them was doing pretty poorly. So we then get on this adventure of caring for them, which lasted 14 years. The last parent passing at 96 in 2019. So about probably 6 months into this adventure back in '05, realized I could barely spell the word care. Left what I was doing in software, started my first company, Points of Life, with the idea, I better figure this out. My wife was the hands-on care. I was the project manager over the whole situation, helping her, helping the parents, finding resources, but I knew nothing. So obviously Google was a lot different back then, but read everything I could get my hands on. And then some gentleman showed up at my office and said, hey, why don't you go out there and start educating what you're learning about? Like, what do you mean? Well, go out there and talk about what you've discovered. So I started talking locally in Northern California, where I was living, about the complexities of aging and care. The guys came back a few months later and said, okay, we're not done. Go out there and start educating nationally. Oh, okay. So for 20 years, been doing that, and all of that, I hope I'm answering your question, all of that has really shaped what now is a plan to age.
Yeah, you said you had 14 years of it. I guess that's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, you had the opportunity to be with your aging parents for an additional 14 years, right, but it was a lot of work in that period of time. And I think a lot of people don't really expect, when their parents get to that point that they need to care for them, that it's going to be as long. But at the same time, we're hopeful that it is long.
I would agree with you. I mean, it was 14 years. We had physical injury, we had mental decline, we had all of it between all 4 of the parents. And since we were not prepared for this, I tell people, it's like you get on a roller coaster and they're in the very front car and you're in the car behind them. And you go up, down, inside, the whole things that a roller coaster can do. And you're hanging on tightly because as their health changes and they continue to age, you have no idea where that front car is going to go. and you just hope, as the loving children, that you're there making the right decisions with them so this process turns out as well as it possibly can.
So you've said we need a national wake-up call about aging. What exactly are we not seeing or not saying about what aging really involves?
Wow, that's a huge topic. So for all these years that I've been educating, once COVID hit, I started doing more online, but before that, I was doing a lot more in person. I've literally stood in front of thousands of individuals. And what still saddens me and frustrates me as I sit here today, we're really not, I mean, yeah, I've been in front of thousands of people, but we're really not that much further ahead understanding what aging and care means in this country than we were 20 years ago. What do I mean by that? Most families are like my wife and myself. You may have kids, you may not have kids, you may be younger, you may be older, you're involved in everything that's going on in your life. You're keeping a job, trying to keep a job, trying to make money, trying to pay your rent, trying to pay the mortgage, whatever the thing may be. And then all of a sudden, you've probably moved away from mom and dad. I don't know that many people that still live 10 miles, 20, 30 miles from where mom and dad, where you started, through someone you've fallen in love with, through a job, you've moved around the country, you've moved out of the country. And what is frustrating when I still talk to people today and I ask them questions, I don't get an educated response about what you and I are talking about. What are the complexities if something were to happen to mom? She fell down the stairs. What are the complexities if dad had a stroke? Do you understand what care means? Do you understand where care is available? And probably the biggest question of all, do you understand what care costs? And I even ask professionals, financial planners, similar questions. And I hate to say this, but probably over 90% of the financial planners that I've worked with do not understand the options for care, do not understand what care costs. And accordingly, they've worked with clients for years, but they're not educating them about this issue. So it is a huge issue that we're trying to figure out. How do we educate a country? Because what's also really sad, when you look at the cost of care, pretty big number, probably over 95% of people in this country can't afford to pay someone else to care for a loved one. And so what does that mean? It means it's going to fall on them. And are they going to then pick up, move back home where mom or dad still may be, take care of them? Are they going to move mom or dad in with them and all the complexities that go around that?
And most families don't have care plans in place. Why is it so common for people to wait until kind of crisis hits before they act?
I think it's similar to what I said a few minutes ago, and I'll use my wife. I don't think we're uneducated, dumb people, but we weren't thinking about it. It isn't fun. On the West Coast where you live, and I live on the West Coast as well, people will vacation in Hawaii. They'll plan every aspect of that vacation, down to the beaches they're going to go to, the restaurants, the convertible they're going to rent. On the East Coast, they do the same thing, maybe with the Bahamas. It's fun. It's exciting. The last thing most people want to talk about is getting older. I mean, think about, we spend billions, I don't have the exact number, but billions in this country on anti-aging products. We're not going to get old. Well, we're going to be 35 forever. But that's not reality. But putting together a plan, having a conversation is something that most people, I don't want to do. This isn't fun. This isn't comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a big downside of our society right now is that we're so focused on longevity, but we're not willing to address what longevity entails.
Yeah.
So can you kind of walk us through what makes up a strong care program or plan? What are some of the essential pieces that families should be thinking about?
So it starts with this little word called conversation. And we counsel people on our site. If you have brothers and sisters, before you reach out to mom or dad or grandparents, you want to have a conversation with those siblings. You simply want to find out who's the best person to reach out. Is it the alpha dog, the oldest? Maybe not. Maybe it's the youngest that seems to have the closest relationship, let's say, with mom. So after those first phone calls of talking to your brothers and sisters, maybe you were home for a few days recently and you saw changes in mom, or you saw changes in dad, or dad called you by your brother's name, which startled you. So you want to reach out to the siblings in your family, start this conversation, a realistic conversation. Hey guys, we were just there. Mom's really walking differently. Dad's struggling. He called me by your name, not my name. Once that's decided, then what we call the family conversation, that individual, not all 2, 3, 4, 5 brothers and sisters, picking up the phone, calling mom, calling dad. People have asked me through the years, how do I start that conversation? What do I say? And I tell people, the last thing you want to do is pick up the phone and go, Mom, we got to talk. I mean, you're not going to get very far. But normally, if you ask a parent for advice, they're going to say, sure, honey, what do you need? How can I help? And then you want to find out some basic questions. Where do they want to live as they age? Probably 99% of people are going to say right here in our home. Then you have to start looking at it. Is that realistic? And then, God forbid, something were to happen to them. Who do you want taking care of you? And then we have this care plan within our side of a plan to age, and it goes through all these different parameters that once you get involved in this conversation, you want to find out about their health, what plans they do or do not have, who they want caring for them. Do they have an estate plan? Have they done a financial plan, meaning do they understand what the cost of care is? Have they started saving for it? And much more than just that.
If you're enjoying the Aging Well podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, or follow on your favorite platform so you will never miss an episode. And if you find our conversations helpful, please share the podcast with a friend because aging is something we're all doing and we're better at doing it together. And support our guests in this podcast financially by visiting the affiliate links in the episode description below and use the links or codes provided for discounts on products we have vetted and feel comfortable recommending to our valued viewers and listeners. Thank you, and now back to the podcast. And it seems like something we decide way too late to have that conversation. It's something we probably should be doing a lot earlier in life before parents are even considering, I'm going to get old here sometime.
Yeah.
I better start thinking about this. So you've kind of mentioned the site, the Plan to Age offers a number of free different tools and checklists and conversation guides. Somebody visits the site, what can they expect to find when they visit?
Sure. So the way we built it, backing up, about a year and a half ago, I met my future business partner that became the co-founder of the site, Peter Ross, who's the co-founder and CEO of Senior Helpers. They're one of the largest in-home care companies in the country. And he and I kept talking for well over a year as we developed this. And between both of us, we've been in this industry now over 40 years. And so we tried to make it work for most people. What do I mean by that? We're really trying, there's the whole area of the site that's about planning, everything we're just talking about, really trying to help people understand why they should plan, how they have these conversations. They fill out this care plan that's actually a living document on the site. They can download it, similar to an estate plan. They want to update it as things change within the family unit, mom or dad's health changes. But we also realize, let's say in 10 years it's going great, most people would still unfortunately deal with this in crisis. So we have an area of the site that deals with that. You've already gotten that text. You've already gotten that phone call. Mom's in the ER. Something's probably broken. It's probably her hip. You've never had these conversations. She lives 4 states away from you. What do I need to do? Who can help? So we have the resources built into the site to help that individual and their family. And every day, every week, we are adding more resources. We want to get to a point. This industry is interesting. There's a lot of resources out there. They're scattered all over the place. There isn't one location where you can find just about everything you need. That's what we're trying to achieve on the crisis part of this site. So irrespective of what a family needs, because mom broke something, dad had the stroke, whatever it may be, they hopefully can find.
And you've talked about the sandwich generation where you have individuals caring for their aging parents. It's kind of where you were at, and certainly more so, kind of in your situation with younger kids at the time. So they're caring for their aging parents while they're still trying to raise kids and are working full-time jobs. And as you mentioned, they could be traveling. There's a lot of responsibilities that go along with that. What are some of the pressures they're facing, and how does planning help to ease some of those burdens?
Wow. Boy, I wish we had thought about this before this happened. When this happened in our life, we had an 11-year-old and we had a 7-year-old. Neither's driving. And yeah, we had kids a little bit later, but I'm sure there's millions of people like us around the country. So it's just every day I'm trying to go to work, the long commute I had to work to earn a living. My wife is at her parents' house, my parents' house, taking care of them. And we're looking at each other and going, okay, who's going to pick up our 11-year-old from school? Is he okay to come home and be by himself? Who's going to pick up our 7-year-old from school? She's not okay to come home and stay by herself. Who can watch her until one of us gets home? For me, it was probably not till 7 o'clock at night. For my wife, it was probably after that. How do we want them having a normal life, whatever normal means. Our daughter was into dance. Our son was into every sport in the world. How do we keep that going? How do we keep them involved in what they're doing and still be caring for the 4 parents? And can you plan for everything? Of course not. But if you're thinking as a family unit, especially because you realize mom and dad, grandparents are getting older, it may be you that's taking care of them. How is that going to affect your family, your children? What should we be doing as a family to prepare for that before that text comes or that phone call happens?
And then there's the workplace. So how is caregiving affecting employees in the workplace?
Wow.
I'm sure that's a big burden as well. What kind of policy changes and kind of cultural shifts do you think might help in this situation?
So again, what's sad and frustrating. So I was working in a large corporation when this happened. After the first phone call, the next morning when I get back to work, the first thing I do is check my company's website, and there was nothing to help me in the situation that I was in. And what I realized I had to do, first of all, I'm in my early 50s when this is happening. The last thing I was going to do was open my mouth to my boss, to a coworker, that I'm dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4 older parents that are ill, because I felt severe repercussions for my job and the safety of my job. And what's sad, in all the research I still do, that hasn't changed. I'm going to, again, give out a very broad number. Well over 95% of companies in this country, whether they're 10 employees, 15 employees, 10,000 employees, really are not set up to help that employee when loved ones age. It took forever for companies to understand childcare. I used to work for a large company years ago that actually had a childcare location on the premises. I've been waiting for all these years to see some progressive companies out there that would start an elder daycare on the premises, someplace you could bring mom or dad while you worked. If they're out there, I'm not seeing them. So to answer your question, there needs to be a lot of flexibility. First of all, that employee that's still hiding it like I did needs to feel free to go to HR, go to the boss and say, this is the situation I'm in. Yeah, it's going to be tough, because what we found and what research has found, you normally have about 20 hours added to your normal work week when you're dealing with a parent. You're working 40 hours, you're working 50 hours, add 20 hours on top of that. What we see happening then, it starts affecting the health of that employee who is the caregiver to those older loved ones. It not only the health effect, but the fact they're being pulled in so many directions. Maybe mom does live 20 miles away. I got to take mom to the doctor. What you think may be a couple-hour process turns into 3 or 4. And all of a sudden, your productivity at work is starting to go down. And that's where the repercussions come to your job, when all of a sudden this happened in your life, and now you're not as healthy. You're hitting their healthcare products, if they have one, your employer, and you're also not as productive as you were. So part of what we're trying to do is really get companies to understand, like childcare, this issue's real. We have over 100 million people in this country that are over 50. I mean, think about that. Over 100 million people. And most of the people that wind up caring for them have a job.
And it's not going to get any easier because we're getting older and there's fewer young people.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and I think that's where, I'm an academic, so, I'm in the university setting most of the week and most of the year. That's where I think there's an opportunity for connections between the university and the aging community, and also universities with the younger communities as well. I mean, to help to kind of manage that sandwich situation where you have older adults, you have younger adults. I mean, we have universities. My university just opened up a occupational therapy program. Those kids are starving to be working with older people.
Sure.
And so why can't the universities kind of create some opportunities for, parents to drop their parents off, and again, kind of having that daycare, but also having a little bit of medical care as well, kids doing the same thing, get the older populations involved with the younger communities. I think it's really a large community problem that needs to be addressed as a community and not just left to the individual families to resolve. And unfortunately, right now, it's the families that are having to resolve that. So why is it that families avoid these conversations, and how does your program help them to get kind of past that discomfort?
So it kind of goes back to what I was talking about. It's just not, you're a loving son, you're a loving daughter, maybe you don't live near mom or dad, but you're still close to them. The last thing you want to think about it is them aging, them getting sick, them having a severe fall, or maybe a combination thereof. So you try not to think about it. You just don't want to deal with it. And so when you don't deal with it, kind of like my wife and myself, you're not having these conversations. You're not being upfront with your loved ones. I mean, part of what we need to start understanding, and I talk about and people will look at me like I'm a little crazy, even the grandchildren. Let's say someone's grandchild, they're late 20s, 30 years old. They've gotten themselves a very good job. The grandparents don't know exactly what they're making, but the rumors are in the family that little Johnny's doing really well, making a um, very good salary. So something happens to grandma, or something happens, irrespective of what age she is, if she gets to a point where she needs care and she can't afford it, she's probably placing a call to that grandson who would have no idea that a call like that is coming. Johnny, I'm going to need care. It's going to be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month. Could you possibly help me with that cost? So we need to first of all, I love your idea about the community, and I'd love to speak more about that. But from a family unit, we need even that younger grandchild that's working to understand when something happens, this potentially could encompass the whole family.
So what else should they be thinking about when it comes to finances?
One more time, please.
What else should they be thinking about when it comes to finances? And probably when should we really start thinking about those financial plans?
And I truly believe, and this is why we're doing what we're calling a national conversation on aging, we need the youngest folks in the family that have a job, that are starting to make money, to understand they really should be working with someone from a financial perspective, financial advisor, financial planner, forever. And so we're talking young, we're talking late 20s, 30s. Obviously, it gets even more important as you age. But forever, there's been this long word that's talked about in the financial industry called retirement, saving for retirement. And what we're trying to help people understand, there's this small letter word that starts with a C, two words, care and cost. And we want people to understand from that young age, I know it's not fun. I know it's not great. I know it's not something you want to think about, but we need to start saving for care and its cost. Just to throw out some numbers so people understand. If you're going to move mom to an assisted living, assuming mom agrees to that, the average rent around the country just to get a room is about $5,000 a month. And then if she needs care, they're going to be different levels of care at different cost added on top of that 5,000. If you're in the bigger cities, San Francisco, LA, New York, Chicago, Dallas, you're probably talking about a base rent that could be $6,000, $7,000, $9,000 a month. If mom were to start having severe memory issues and you wanted to move her to a memory care community, and they're out there, was talking to a gentleman in Boston last week, and he told me the average cost to move just the average monthly rent for a room in a memory care community in the Boston area is over $15,000. That's community living. Most people think if something happens to mom, we'll move someone into her house. It can't cost that much. The average dollar amount around the country is $40 an hour. In the larger cities, it's pushing 50. So when you talk about you live in Baltimore, mom's still in the family home in Houston, and she needs 24-hour care because you can't move there and get there. That bill for 24 hours a day, bringing someone in the home, $29,000, $30,000.
Wow.
And that's when people look at me and think I'm crazy, but that's what it costs.
Yeah, and the reality of a lot of this too is that you have to plan well ahead of the emergency to get into these places because there's tremendous waiting lists to get into memory care facilities and these, senior facilities. You just can't say, okay, let's go look around and see if we can find you, a place to move you in next month.
Precisely.
I'm not sure if you know.
Go ahead.
Are there statistics on how long the waiting period is for getting into those?
I mean, there's the 5-star assisted livings down to the lower ones. Some of the lower ones don't have the waiting list that as you go up the chain, but I've seen waiting lists that are 2 years long.
Yeah.
So you're precisely right. That's why this conversation and understanding this issue, moms, I'm picking an age, late 70s, early 80s, you're starting to see some difficulty with mobility. You're starting to see some memory issues. Before it gets worse, and this is hopefully at the latest before crisis, having these conversations. If mom says, you know what, we have the pool, we have the garden, I can't do that anymore, maybe I should move someplace. To your point, it's something we need to be thinking about earlier, especially if in the area where mom lives, you're talking about a long waiting list. And then go back to the numbers I threw out a little while ago. We have over 100 million people 50 and older. And one of the questions I ask all the time is, how are we going to house and how are we going to care for all those people?
And how does care planning really intersect with emotional, relational, and even spiritual well-being of the clients you work with?
It's not going to be that really tough journey my wife and I had. Hopefully that roller coaster that I talk about will be a little more straight, not as curvy, not upside down. You're this family unit, as I talked about. You love mom. You love dad. You don't want these horrific things happening to them. But there is a huge emotional tag and stress on the whole family as moms and dads and grandparents age. We as a nation have to start understanding, yeah, we'd love to be 35 like I talked about forever, but we're aging. When I was doing some educational meetings probably 10, 15 years ago, and I remember when I was doing that, information had just come out that kids born 10 or 15 years ago could possibly see life past 120 years of age. So, first of all, people want to retire at 65 or 70, and I look at people and go, are you prepared to live another 30, 40, 50 years? And that's kind of insane to think about, but it's real. And then emotionally, spiritually, how that affects that whole family. There was a client that I dealt with years ago in California. He passed away about 10 years ago. He passed away at 117.
Wow.
And he didn't start having adverse effects until he was 115. So that's not that much of an it isn't that abnormal. I'm dealing with a client right now that in 6 months will be 100. So this is real, and the family has to understand all that.
My goal is 120, and I want to be where, I'm kicking until I'm, right about 120 and have as shortest period of time possible in that, what we call the fourth age, that period of decline and decrepitude. I mean, if life would be perfect for me, I'd be 120, go out for a run, come back, sit in my recliner, pop a beer, and fall asleep and just not wake up.
There you go. That would be awesome.
But with that in mind, you're looking at, okay, I'm a professor. I'm 62. How many more years can I continue to keep teaching? If I could teach out the rest of my life and be productive, that'd be great. Sure. I don't think they'd want to keep me around that long because my salary would be tapping out a little bit too high. But, looking at optimistically at life, you're looking at least probably 40 years in retirement. Yep. And that's a long time to have to be kind of cashing out from your, IRA and, your retirement accounts.
Yeah. That's why I tell people, okay, you're 70, you retire. Awesome. Congratulations. Are you really set up just to live, just to pay the everyday bills, whether you rent, whether you own? Are you set up? And then I know I don't want to bring this up, people, but if this little tiny word care were to happen, are you set up for that? As when I talk to older moms and dads over the years, they say to me, I don't want to be a burden on my kids. But then if I ask them, who do you expect to take care of you? And this isn't a sexist comment, it's the truth. They'll usually say, my daughter or my daughter-in-law. For some reason, guys can't care, which is crazy, but this becomes a huge on the daughter or daughter-in-law. So it's understanding, yeah, you may make it to 90, you may make it to 99, almost 100. Do you have the money to live that long? And if something were to happen to you, who's going to take care of you? How are you going to pay for it?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. My in-laws planned very well ahead. They kind of went into a more continuous care retirement community. And when my father-in-law got Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's, they were in a position to be able to be cared for, and it was paid for. And my mother-in-law was close by, and situations are just really worked out well for them. She's 94 right now and still in a good situation. Wow. And my dad and his wife planned pretty well, and she did very well financially. And I think it was also fortunate that my dad kind of died unexpectedly. We visited from, I guess it was a little over about a year and a half ago, Christmas time. Got to see him. Excuse me. And they went home, and a couple of weeks later, she called me on a Sunday morning and said he didn't wake up last night.
Wow.
And it was a shock, but it was no burden of expense to them and everything else. And she's in great health right now. And my mom was probably not at all well prepared,
right,
but was in a situation where she declined rather rapidly. And we were all able to kind of pull together in the end and manage things pretty well. But a huge amount of that burden went on to my youngest sister. Sure. And God bless her for the work she did in those final, months of my mom's life. But do you have any personal stories or from your own experience or from families you've helped that really kind of highlight how important this work is and how it matters so much?
It goes around what you were just talking about. What I've seen personally and what I've seen professionally, if there are multiple siblings, I really, really encourage people to get on the same page. And a comment you just said, if one person winds up with the responsibility of taking care of mom or taking care of dad, maybe they live 5 miles down the street or brothers and sisters have moved away. What I've seen a lot is a brother, usually a brother, maybe halfway across the country or all the way across the country, calling that younger sister every week. Have you done that? Have you done this? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you thinking about this? It doesn't work. And as you just said, the person that's actually there and caring for mom and dad, when that brother who lives 2,000 miles away has shown up once or twice, doesn't understand the challenges usually female is going through. So I would really encourage people, understand what this is like. Don't sit there and demand your sister do or brother do this or don't do this. Understand what they're going through. Understand the situation for health, for finances that mom and dad are in. So these conversations are realistic and helpful instead of the opposite.
And do you find families that the older adult assumes that a certain child is going to pick up the burden of caring for them, and when the time comes, that child's like, I can't do this. I have, I have a couple of young kids, or I have a job, or I'm, a couple states away. Why not, my older brother here who's closer and everything else? How do you address those situations?
You're exactly right. And unfortunately, again, it's usually the daughter. So mom lives in Houston. The daughter lives in Denver. She's married. She has a partner. She's got 2 or 3 kids. She's got a job. And then there's this misconception. So mom broke her hip. Well, I'll fly down there. I'll be there for 4 or 5 days because I can take that much time off work, and mom will be fine. And people don't understand, as people get into their 80s and break a hip, many, many times that winds up taking them, because the physical therapy is very demanding, which you understand. They resist that. They wind up staying in bed. They get all the complications from that. And a family doesn't understand how mom went from a broken hip to passing away. And there's this misconception that if I'm there for 4 or 5 days, mom will be fine. She'll be getting the coffee off the 3rd shelf, and life will be the same. People have to understand. I tell this story about myself. 10 years ago, we were doing some work to our house. I was the idiot on a ladder at 8 o'clock in the morning cleaning out the attic when I got into an argument with the ladder, fell about 10 feet, broke a femur. So, of course, I thought 2 or 3 months, I was 60ish, 2 or 3 months, I'll be fine. It took about 8. I wasn't in my 80s. So understand, if something like that happens to mom, she's not going to be okay in 4 or 5 days.
All right, so we're going to shift gears here a little bit and ask you the question that we ask of all of our guests. What are you doing personally to age well?
So what I'm doing personally, I actually have a spinal condition I've had for a while, so I try to stay very active. I'm out usually at the gym 3 days a week. When it's beautiful like today, if I'm not at the gym, I'm usually out taking minimum a 2-mile walk. The community that I live in, we do have a golf course, so if I'm not walking, I'm out golfing. I'm just trying to stay as active, keeping this body moving from a physical perspective. And then at 72 now, running a plan to age, trying to keep this active, having conversations with great people like yourself, and then just talking to folks all over the country on a daily basis, and hopefully keeping this oiled and things spinning up there. So the top part of my body works well for years to come.
Do you have any habits or tricks you like to do to kind of keep the mind sharp?
Yeah, this is going to sound really crazy, but sometimes I will talk to myself. I do a lot of driving to go to locations, and I'm by myself in the car. I will play games out loud with myself in the car, trying to remember things, looking at license plates, looking at different makes of models of cars. And I do it on purpose just to keep everything up here moving instead of sitting in a half hour or hour drive in total silence. I started this probably about 20 years ago when I got into this industry because I was seeing the effect on other people. And I said to myself, what can I do to hopefully keep myself moving forward and lucid?
That's a good idea. I do that, but I never did it intentional like you do. I mean, it's just something I get kind of done to pass the time when I've had long drives. So I'll have to keep doing that and hopefully keep my mind sharp.
Cool.
So what is the one step you'd encourage someone to take today, even if they feel overwhelmed?
So if you're the older people, the loved ones in the family, reach out to at least one of your adult children. Have a conversation. Let them know what you're thinking. Let them know what's going on. Let them know, as we talked about, we'd still love to live in this house if we can. Let them know, if something happens to me, we want X or Y. If you're the younger adult children from 30s, 40s, 50s, we've seen 70-year-olds taking care of their 95-year-old parents. Reach out to them. It's that same conversation in reverse, understanding how they're doing, what they want. First of all, it's engaging for that older individual to have that conversation. And it also really enlightens the adult children. It'll start the premise of the plan that we're talking about, because we're trying as hard as we can, and it's a big thing to do to alleviate this crisis for families, so you don't get that text, you don't get that phone call from the ER and go, what do I do now?
I think it would be important, too, to engage the third generation as well. I think sometimes as grandkids can get left out of the conversation. And, equally, it's as important for the grandchildren to understand what grandma's plans are and, what they can do to kind of help out as well.
Totally agree, because what we'll see, 50-year-old mom winds up taking care of her 80-year-old parents, and mom's kids, all of a sudden their life changes because mom's asking them to do things they've never had to do before, because mom is leaving for a few days, a few weeks to go take care of grandma. Maybe they just need to come and take care of mom's house. What are the plans? Take care of the dog, whatever it may be. But you're exactly right. So we need to engage that whole family unit.
And I think something else we don't consider, you mentioned the 70-year-old caring for their 94-year-old parent. Sometimes that 70-year-old can run into health issues that take them away or put them in a more precarious situation. And now you have the third generation is having to deal with the two upper generations.
And I've seen that.
And we don't think about that stuff.
I've seen that 70-year-old that's having health issues because they've been caring for their 95. Maybe it started when mom was 93 and it's 2 years into it. And they're suffering the consequences because that 70-year-old hasn't really taken care of themselves. They're overweight, they have diabetes, whatever the case may be, and they're suffering. And now the family, as you just said, has two individuals, mom, who may be 72, 73, and her older mom as well.
Was there anything we missed talking about today?
Not really. If I can just tell people, please check out a plan to age. The 2 is actually the number 2, so a plan2age.org. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. So our goal is pretty simple, just trying to help people. In the end of July 29th, and then each quarter after that, we're going to start having the national conversation on aging. It is going to cover all the subject matter we just talked about. We're going to have experts in their field providing the education on these calls. I've been able to educate thousands. I have a small goal of educating millions. So we are literally trying to get America to understand, what does it mean to age? What does it mean to need care? What are the options? What's it cost? What's an estate plan? Why is that important? What are the different documents? Why should I be saving for these costs? And so much more. And just trying to do our little part.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I think we need to see a lot more of this conversation, and that's one of the things that I think we have the opportunity in this podcast to highlight, and we've had a number of different guests that are approaching this from different perspectives, and it's kind of nice to see, your services all kind of beginning to dovetail, but just keep doing what you're doing and just keep aging well and helping others to age well as well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast, and until next time, keep aging well.